I would also like to take this opportunity to invite Sanjay, who is the COO of Marico and also the CEO of New Business Initiatives and New Brands for Marico. Thank you so much. Good evening, everyone. And it's an absolute pleasure to have you all with us today. Thank you so much for your time. It's a pleasure to be having this Connect in person after 2 years, 3 years of hiatus. So absolutely delighted to be here with all of you. And we have with us an extremely esteemed panel today. And I'm looking forward to the insights that they throw on us. I'll start with Sanjay. Sanjay, Marico has made iconic brands like Parachute, Saffola, and you've been part of the journey. You've been a Marico veteran throughout. These brands were built largely through traditional channels, and yet Marico has been one of the early adopters of digital channels as well. Not just for its traditional brands. We just had Saffola Fitify, for example, win the last section of awards. But also bringing under its umbrella the new age brands like Beardo, True Elements, Just Herbs. I would want to understand that so far over the years, commerce advertising has largely been seen as a means to drive mid-funnel objectives. But now, with 33% of purchase journeys originating on e-commerce channels and e-commerce platforms, how do you see the role of commerce advertising evolving from here on?
Thank you. Thank you for having me here first. And I think, it's an honor to be with the esteemed panelists. So thank you all. See, Kanchan, for us, we have been a CPG company. And in heart lies our appreciation and our understanding of where my consumer shops and what does he want. As things evolve, we were, in earlier days, while consumer insight was always there, we understood that customers are in all over the place and hence consumer shops very differently. In today's context, we are actually extremely excited with all the possibilities that our consumer is creating for us by accessing media in a very different way. Talk about a digital media, which is so different from the earlier erstwhile newspaper and for subsequently TV. But if you talk about today, I think one of the best things that is happening in the commerce space and largely on the commerce platform is the fact that you have an ability to sharp shoot my customer and talk to places where I want them to talk to. I think the fact that you are evolving, which was reflected in the earlier presentations, which was made by, again, esteemed colleagues of Flipkart, I think the fact is this is where we have the biggest buck for the money. So as far as we are concerned, we run all kind of medias, we participate, we do test runs, we have data to back and say that, okay, at what level of funnel, where do we really get the better buck for the buck, right? And it is because of this, I believe, that with your innovation and with the kind of targeted and sharp shooting that you're doing now, in the coming times, partners like us will only keep investing more and more. So this is an exciting space. Keep innovating, keep getting it sharper for us. That allows us to make more ROI as well as gives you a good return, and we are here to stay.
That is very encouraging to hear. I will move on to Shankar. Shankar, you built Plum as a brand online. And you stood by the philosophy of being able to operate at a price per ml that meant that the brand commanded a premium. You chose online as your channel to build the brand. You were just mentioning that you started with Plum Goodness and then Flipkart was your first platform. Can you share with us how did commerce platforms like Flipkart enable you in the journey? And what is the role of ad experiences in building brands?
Sure. We started in 2014 as a brand, and I think in 2014 itself we were on board on Flipkart. And e-commerce was very, very early days back then. I think the gap that we saw specifically as a brand is India was divided largely, the Indian brand landscape was broadly into two segments back then. You had the mass brands, which were doing all the TV advertising and doing retail selling. And then the premium end was largely brands from abroad, which you either ask your relatives to bring, or you had to go and shop in their shops, or they are available through grey market, etc. So there's a huge gap for the what we call the aspiring upgrader. That's the sort of the terminology that we use. The aspiring upgrader who's looking for brands which are in between a mass brand. She's upgrading from the mass brands, but she yet can't go and catch the premium brand, either in terms of availability or price, which is where platforms like Flipkart and all the other e-commerce marketplaces that we have been on, and we saw even in the previous presentations as to how the early adopters and then the next, massification is now happening as a third. I think we as brands caught the early adopters in sync with where the Flipkarts of the world caught them. So that's really, I think, formed the fundamental of brands like us, not just us. I think there are several brands that scaled like us across categories on platforms. I think that synchronization happening led to the foundation of some of these D2C brands scaling up. Now, in terms of ad experience, I think I'll again echo the same sentiment here, that we are getting smarter about what we show people. As opposed to showing the same thing to everyone, we are getting smarter about what they're looking for and almost being able to get an insight into their mind, their thinking. And as that happens, people find advertising more and more relevant and therefore less intrusive and more helpful. I think that's the big transition that data and insights are helping us across platforms to develop better advertising that works for people, that is relevant to them, that is useful to them, rather than being an interruption to their lives. I think that's in some what I would call as the progression of ad experience that has happened over the last decade or so.
Thank you for sharing that, Shankar. I'll move on to Vikas. Vikas, you built Happilo as a brand in a category that has historically been unbranded and in best case seen mostly seller labels. How do you think commerce advertising enabled you in the journey? It will be good to hear your story.
Yeah. Thank you for having me here, first of all, and pleasure to share the stage here. So, we started in 2016 as a very young brand. Typically, I think we should be thankful to platforms like Flipkart. Because in the initial days, when the awareness was pretty low in terms of e-commerce and the customers were very hesitant, I think Flipkart was one of the first platforms which actually advertised very heavily and educated the customer about the benefits of shopping online, about convenience and trying to make it work. That was the tough part. I think today we see a lot of platforms emerging, but I think Flipkart was in the initial days. So when we started in 2016, for a young brand like us who are into selling food products, especially dry fruit based snack products, the ASP is not very high, right? And also for you to reach the customer, you need a distribution channel. So for young brands like us, if you want to penetrate the market, I think it's very difficult to set up your own sales and distribution, where India is such a large country, right, and pretty much scattered across everywhere. So but platforms like Flipkart give you that leverage, because young brands know how to build a product, but they are not actually specialists in terms of fulfilling the customer requirement in terms of delivery, in terms of connecting across a wide range of pin codes. You might be present in one modern trade, but being present on Flipkart actually gives you access to the entire India and Bharat as well. Where we are now seeing that 10 to 15% contribution is coming from e-commerce in India. So the growth story is there. And we talk about ads, I think from the day we were onboarded in Flipkart, we were very aggressive in terms of how do we acquire the customer. Because we also have our own website where we also try to promote through a D2C channel. But the cost of acquiring the customer is very high. You are actually shooting somewhere in the sky that you don't know actually where to actually point your gun at. So basically in Flipkart, you already have a potential intentful customer being on the platform there. And where Flipkart gives opportunities to many brands across the country to be relevant and to be available at the platform. So that is where advertisements play a very key role. When a customer comes on the page, he will not be willing to scroll through the entire catalog. So we did a lot of interesting partnership with Flipkart, where we leverage their insights and how do we actually go closer to the customer in terms of what customer wants to buy, working with them on developing certain exclusive packs with them. We were actually able to leverage the platform very deeply. In fact, we won a couple of awards recently, E4M awards for the brand partnership with Flipkart. So overall, Flipkart as a platform in terms of advertisements, I think even not even only in terms of sales-oriented advertisement, even for brand building, I think Flipkart has played a great role in our journey as well. During the COVID times, I think the acceleration happened even faster. We were expecting that the things will, in the next 5 years, will reach to a scale where we had planned, but the COVID has accelerated the growth completely, and we were able to grow, say, 4x on the Flipkart platform. So thanks to the penetration of internet, smartphone, and with capabilities of Flipkart and their fulfillment, and now leveraging on their ad channels, it has been a great story and a great win-win for both the platform and the brands like us.
Thank you. That is very interesting. Anuj, Bajaj has been one of the traditional brands that has been very proactive about its digital strategy. We have seen Bajaj Consumer launch a lot of new products, first through e-commerce as a channel, be it your Argan Almond Oil selection, the set of serums that you've been experimenting with. Do you see e-commerce and commerce advertising complementing TV advertising for traditional brands like Bajaj?
First of all, once again, thank you for having me here. It's a privilege to be with all of you. I think Bajaj, as a company, we've been slightly delayed in our race to get onto e-commerce bandwagon, but we've gone very aggressive from about a 2% salience of e-com to 11% in the previous quarter. So it's been a learning for us in terms of, there are companies like Marico which have been there for quite some time, but we've been learning in this phase. I think what it is emerging is that while we do spend a significant amount of money on digital advertising, what commerce advertising is helping us is get the last mile. And we've seen proof of that very recently during the BBT, that commerce advertising has given us better results. In fact, now e-commerce advertising almost contributes to more than 50% of our regular digital advertising. That's the kind of returns that we are getting, and it is across brands. It's not just traditional brands or new brands. It is happening across brands. So I think that bridge between traditional TV advertising and a last mile connect with the consumer on the internet, that is something that commerce advertising is filling really well.
Great, that's amazing. Shankar, I'll go back to you. Shyam, in his Bain presentation, mentioned that a typical e-com user spends around 10 minutes. How do you think commerce advertising enables you to grab your customers' attention in the less than 10 minutes sort of a span that the customer spends on a platform?
I think initially we used to think of e-commerce advertising as, what we call bottom of the funnel advertising. I think where we have moved in terms of our thinking internally is there is actually no funnel. At the moment I visualize it as a ball. It's not linear. So maybe the customer is actually discovering the brand online. Maybe you have spoken about an ingredient somewhere. Maybe it's vitamin C, maybe it is green tea, maybe it is something else. That has piqued their curiosity sometimes. And today when they are with their wallets loaded with a high intent to purchase on an e-commerce platform like Flipkart, for me to nudge into the last mile saying, listen, you've heard of vitamin C in the past, you know what it does, these are all the products that we have, this is a great offer going on from a brand that you love and you trust, so why don't you go for it? I think being able to convert that sort of decision, there's a funnel that has happened, there's a journey that has happened rather. To be able to understand where that person is in that journey and to be able to convert that, I think that is really holy grail. And for that to happen, data again matters as to where that person is in their journey, right? If you are able to tell where the person is in terms of their journey, are they at the discovery phase, are they at the understanding phase, are they at the comparison phase, are they at the price comparison phase? So once we are able to tell that, then it's easier to make good use of those 10 minutes. Otherwise, you sort of shooting slightly wide. But having said that, a coordinated approach in terms of influencer marketing, as well as social media, as well as CPM advertising outside of platform, and making sure that that sort of discovery is cemented on the platform at the point of purchase, that's what we've seen work well, as opposed to being over-indexed on any of these.
That's very interesting. Sanjay, I'll come back to you. You don the hat for both traditional brands as well as D2C brands. How do you foresee brand building on e-commerce platforms evolve from here? Do you think it's going to continue to be commerce-led brand building, or do you think the brand building strategies will emerge independent of commerce on e-com platforms?
See, I think first and foremost, there is a huge space now for digital brands. This is primarily because of what telephones have done and what has been done by the platforms like yourself. In this space, there is enough that you can do in terms of creating a sizable business for your brand. And in that journey, in order to talk to your consumer, this is one ecosystem. This is definitely not all. So I would rather say there has to be a mix, which is a balanced mix. You need to do things offline. There are stages of the brand in which stages or a certain proposition at which time you need to be more active inside a platform. But there are also parallel activities that has to happen outside. This is the modeling and this is the mix that helps us generate more. But what I like about the fact on the commerce platform, as I said earlier, the ROIs are getting only better. They're becoming more sharper. They are talking with the right consumers who anyway have come to my site because there is an intent to buy, and they are catching them in the right space. So in my view, the mix in terms of investment getting made on that will keep skewing towards over the time to the commerce side.
That is very interesting. So as I take it, you see commerce advertising evolve as a channel that complements your traditional channels of advertising and at the same time gives you a lot more control on targeting the right customers, targeting the right cohorts, and improving ROI. This has been very insightful. Any last words of insight from all of you?
Oh, thank you.
Thank you so much for your time. It was a pleasure having you all with us today.